Shedeur Sanders brought more than talent. He brought the kind of discipline and leadership that teams build around. And yet, Kevin Stefanski ignored it. Game after game, the evidence piled up, and the coaching staff kept pushing a narrative that didn't match what everyone could see on the field. The choice to delay Sanders' rise wasn't just a tactical error. It became a symbol of stubbornness. Stefanski's refusal to admit his mistake has become the center of a growing backlash.
If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed.
With experts now calling for an open apology and a reevaluation of what accountability means in coaching. Segment. KS speaking. That reluctance to pivot, even when it's clear you're wrong, creates friction across the board. Sanders' opportunity was earned, not handed to him. And the delay in recognizing that didn't just stall his momentum, it shook the foundation of the Browns' offensive identity. A coach's job isn't to protect their ego, it's to put the best talent on the field. When that doesn't happen, the whole team pays the price. Kevin Stefanski is backed into a corner. And no, this time it's not because of a missed fourth down conversion or a blown timeout. This time, it's something far more damning. A refusal to admit he mishandled the quarterback situation, with Shedeur Sanders caught squarely in the fallout. The calls from experts aren't just loud, they're relentless. Analysts, former players, insiders, they're all asking the same question. Why did Stefanski start Sanders sooner? And more importantly, why is he refusing to admit he was wrong? Segment. SS Brown's training camp. Because it's not like Stefanski didn't have the information. Shedeur Sanders came in with every quality you want in a quarterback. Sharp preparation, a high football IQ, calm leadership, and serious command of the field. Everyone saw it. His teammates saw it. The media saw it. Even the fans in the stands could feel it. The only person who seemed unable or unwilling to recognize it was a head coach. And when you start connecting the dots, it's not hard to see why people are calling this sabotage. Not in the dramatic conspiracy theory way, but in a way that matters most. A leader actively choosing not to act on evidence because it would mean admitting a mistake. And in the NFL, that's a massive problem, especially when it costs your team momentum, chemistry, and potentially wins. Let's get something straight. This wasn't a matter of Sanders needing more time. It wasn't about development. It wasn't about him not being ready. The facts are clear. Sanders had already proven himself through consistent effort and performance before he ever got the start. He had the locker room behind him. He had the preparation. He had the presence. But none of that was enough to overcome Stefanski's pride. And that's the real story here. Not just that Stefanski benched a qualified quarterback, but that when a mistake became obvious, he didn't step up and own it. He didn't give Sanders the credit he earned. He didn't offer an explanation. He didn't even say his name. That kind of denial isn't just unprofessional. It's destructive. Segment. SS new match photos. Because when a coach refuses to acknowledge a clear misjudgment, it doesn't just hurt the player involved. It sends a message to the whole team. A message that says, it doesn't matter how hard you work. It doesn't matter how ready you are. If owning up to the truth is too uncomfortable, you won't get your shot. And you can't run a locker room like that. Not in this league. Not with grown men who give everything they have every week. Accountability isn't optional. It's required. So now the Browns are dealing with the aftermath of that silence. Sanders is finally on the field. And thriving. He's poised, effective, and proving every week why he should have been starting sooner. His performances are validating what everyone had been saying for weeks. This wasn't a fluke. This was overdue. But the success makes the delay even harder to ignore. Segment. KS speaking. And that's why people are demanding an apology from Stefanski. Not because they want drama or some public groveling, but because that's what leadership looks like. When you mess up, you admit it. When you delay a decision that could have helped your team win, you say, that's on me. When a player like Shedeur Sanders performs exactly the way he said he could, you give him his moment, and you explain why it took so long. But Stefanski hasn't done that. He's chosen to stay quiet. No statement. No reflection. Just a quiet shift in the lineup. As if we're all supposed to move on and forget the months of hesitation that led up to this point. But fans don't forget. And players definitely don't forget. The truth is, Stefanski's handling of the situation has exposed something deeper. A fear of being wrong. A need to preserve the image of being in control. And that fear has real consequences. Because the longer a coach holds onto a bad decision out of pride, the more damage it does. Segment. Cleveland Browns Matches Master Collection. It's not just about missed wins. It's about mistrust. A locker room needs to know that decisions are being made based on what's best for the team, not what's best for a coach's ego. When that line gets blurred, unity starts to crack. Players start wondering whether performance really matters, or if the game behind the scenes is what's actually driving outcomes. And let's not sugarcoat it. Stefanski's delayed recognition of Sanders did affect team dynamics. It created tension. It stalled development. It kept the Browns from building the kind of momentum they desperately needed earlier in the season. And now, even as Sanders is performing at a high level, that wasted time can't be undone. Segment. SS interview, it's a brutal reality. Because while Sanders has shown nothing but grace and maturity through all of this, the question lingers. What could have been if this decision was made earlier? How many games could have looked different? How much more developed could this offense be by now? We won't know, because that window's closed. And still, no ownership from Stefanski. No press conference acknowledgement. No comment that starts with, "We got it wrong, but we're learning from it." Just silence. And that's exactly what people are tired of. Segment. KS speaking. Fans want honesty. Players want transparency. Analysts want accountability. It's not about tearing someone down. It's about demanding better. Because this isn't high school ball. This is the NFL. And in the NFL, coaching decisions aren't just play calls. They're statements about how you run your team. And right now, the statement is clear. Being right mattered more than doing what was right. But it doesn't have to stay that way. Stefanski still has a chance to shift this narrative, to show growth, to model the kind of leadership the team and the city deserves. It starts with a few simple words. A sentence, even, "We should have started Shedeur earlier. He's proven himself, and that's on me." That's all it takes. Segment. SS and KS too, because while the delay can't be erased, the impact going forward can be different. Stefanski can either continue down the path of denial, or he can stop, look around, and realize that the whole football world is waiting for him to do the right thing. Shedeur Sanders has done his part. He's delivered on the field. He's led with humility. He's earned every bit of praise coming his way. What he hasn't gotten is a coach who's willing to meet him halfway with accountability. And if you're leading a franchise, that's the bare minimum. What happens next? That's up to Stefanski. But one thing is clear. Leadership is on the line now. And when leadership fails to admit fault, everything else, trust, performance, unity, starts to crumble. Segment. Cleveland Browns Matches Master Collection. So let us know what you think. Should Stefanski apologize? Has the damage already been done? Or is there still time to repair the relationship between the coaching staff and the players? Drop your thoughts in the comments, like if you think Shedeur deserved better. And don't forget to subscribe. We're tracking every twist in the story and the ones just like it. Because in the NFL, the real drama doesn't always happen on the field. At this point, it's not even about quarterback controversies or lineup adjustments. It's about credibility. Kevin Stefanski didn't just delay starting Shedeur Sanders. He delayed acknowledging what the rest of the football world could see in high definition. The most prepared, most composed, most ready quarterback on the roster wasn't the one under center. And when the consequences started stacking up, he said nothing. That's the part that stings. Because football, especially at the professional level, is as much about trust as it is about talent. You trust the guy next to you to do his job. You trust the play call. You trust your coach to recognize when something's working or when something clearly isn't. And when that trust breaks down, it doesn't just hurt morale. It changes how players approach the game, how they prepare, how they buy into the system. Segment. SS Browns Training Camp 2, when Stefanski refused to start Shedeur Sanders. Despite his clear preparedness, leadership, and performance in practice, it wasn't just a mistake. It was a statement. A statement that said, "I'd rather protect my image and adapt to what the team needs." And when he refused to own that mistake, it became more than stubbornness. It became a pattern, a reflection of leadership that prioritizes being right over getting it right. Let's not forget how this unfolded. Shedeur wasn't some unpolished project quarterback hoping to earn a spot. He came in already respected for his discipline, attention to detail, and mental toughness. He knew the playbook. He studied film like a vet. He carried himself like a leader. His teammates rallied around him. His reps in practice showed control and confidence. The only thing he didn't have was the endorsement of his head coach. And why? That's the question everyone's still asking. Segment: SS New Match Photos 1. Because if it wasn't about his talent, if it wasn't about his preparation, then what was it? That's where Stefanski's silence becomes a problem. Without explanation, without acknowledgement, it leaves everyone, media, fans, teammates, left to assume the worst. And when people have to guess, they fill the gaps with ego, fear, and pride. And guess what? Those assumptions are starting to sound more like facts. The refusal to give Sanders an earlier shot and a continued refusal to admit that decision hurt the team has now taken on a life of its own. Analysts across the board aren't holding back. They're using words like sabotage, denial, fear-based leadership. And every time Sanders delivers on the field, it makes the original decision look worse. Not just in hindsight, but in real time. Because this isn't about he got lucky or the system worked. This is about a player who was obviously ready and kept proving it, only to be ignored until there was no choice left. Segment: KS speaking, and now the Browns are paying for that delay. Momentum lost, wins missed, offensive rhythm disrupted, and a team dynamic that could have been building with Sanders weeks ago is now playing catch-up. That's what happens when leadership stalls out. And what's Kevin Stefanski's response to all this pressure? To the questions? The criticism? Still nothing. Still no apology. No interview clip where he says, "We probably should have gone with Sanders earlier." No ownership. Just a quiet, uncomfortable pivot like nothing ever happened. Segment: SS and KS2, that kind of leadership creates more than just noise. It creates division. Because if you're a young player in that locker room, what are you thinking right now? You see a guy like Sanders doing everything right and still getting benched for weeks. What message does that send? It says your effort might not matter. Your talent might not matter. What matters is the coach's comfort with being challenged. That kind of message doesn't go away. It lingers. It builds resentment. And eventually, it erodes the very foundation of a team. And while all this is unfolding, Sanders hasn't taken the bait. No passive-aggressive comments. No media jabs. No drama. He's just gone out there, played clean football, and quietly made Stefanski look like he was asleep at the wheel. That makes the silence even worse. Segment: KS speaking. Because when a player shows that kind of professionalism and then proves that he should have been playing, it demands a response. Not just from the coach, but from the entire organization. And instead, all we've gotten is more of the same. A tight-lipped refusal to admit what's glaringly obvious. At this point, it's not just about an apology to Sanders. It's about an apology to the entire team for wasting time, for missing opportunities, for building frustration, and most of all, for making a decision that had more to do with ego than with execution. There's a moment every coach faces where they're forced to choose between their pride and their locker room. This was that moment for Stefanski, and he blew it. Segment: SS New Match Photos had he stepped in front of Mike and said, "We've reassessed the situation. Sanders has earned this. We should have done it earlier, and that's on me." It would have changed everything. The criticism would have faded. The locker room would have rallied. The narrative would have flipped. But because he stayed silent, it's become the story. And that story isn't going away anytime soon. Even if the Browns string together wins, even if Sanders continues to rise, the shadow of that delayed decision looms large. About the coaching staff isn't just bad judgment. It's a lack of accountability. Segment: KS speaking. And in the NFL, that's lethal. Franchises don't fall apart because of one bad call. They fall apart because of leadership that refuses to grow. That doubles down when they should backtrack. That chooses optics over honesty. That's the road Stefanski is on right now. And unless something changes, unless he finally owns this moment, he's not just losing games, he's losing respect. You can't preach accountability to your players if you won't practice it yourself. You can't build a winning culture on top of silence. And you can't expect loyalty when your actions say, "I'll never admit I was wrong." Segment: Cleveland Browns Matches Master Collection. So what now? Does Stefanski finally take responsibility? Does he give Sanders the credit he deserves? Not just in playing time, but in public acknowledgement? Or does he continue pretending that the most obvious quarterback controversy of the season didn't exist? We've all seen what happens. The tape doesn't lie. The locker room knows. The fans know. The analysts have said it loud and clear. It's not just time for a quarterback reset. It's time for a leadership reset. Segment: SS Practicing. Here's the brutal truth. Kevin Stefanski could have had a redemption arc. He could have admitted the misstep, championed Shedeur Sanders' rise, and turned this whole thing into a powerful comeback story. A coach who reevaluates, learns, and grows alongside his team. That narrative would have been a win not just on the field, but in the hearts of players and fans alike. But instead, he chose denial, silence, evasion, and now, it's unraveling faster than he can coach his way out of it. It didn't have to get this loud. The backlash, the expert criticism, the nonstop media pressure, it was all avoidable. All of it. This wasn't a complex decision clouded by uncertainty. This wasn't a 50-50 talent call. It was obvious from the start that Shedeur Sanders was the most prepared and most complete quarterback available. And the longer Stefanski refused to acknowledge that, the more it felt intentional. Segment: SS New Match Photos 1. It wasn't just about football. It became about ego. And now, every game Sanders starts is a living reminder of how badly this was mismanaged. He's not just holding his own, he's thriving, making smart reads, moving the offense, leading with quiet confidence, and doing it all under the weight of a media circus that shouldn't even exist if the right decision had been made when it was supposed to be. Segment: KS Speaking. This is what makes it so frustrating. Sanders didn't come in demanding anything. He didn't throw a fit or make a scene when he was overlooked. He stayed professional. He stayed ready. He did what every coach says they want from a young player. And when the opportunity finally came, he delivered. So what did Stefanski do to reward that? Nothing. Not a public thank you. Not a nod to the delay. Not a single moment of recognition. It's not just tone deaf, it's insulting. Segment: SS and KS. Coaches talk a lot about doing what's best for the team. But what Stefanski has done is the opposite. He let personal pride sit in the driver's seat while his team sat in neutral. And when it was clear that Sanders had the keys to unlock the offense, he still wouldn't admit it. Still wouldn't name the player he once ignored. This isn't just an oversight anymore. It's a character issue. Because real leaders don't pretend mistakes never happened. They own them. They learn from them. They teach others by example. And when a player puts in the work, proves themselves, and performs at a high level, leadership recognizes that. Loudly, publicly. Sanders earned that. Stefanski has yet to give it. Segment: Cleveland Browns Matches Master Collection. And you can see the ripple effect it's having. Players have been through enough in Cleveland. The franchise has churned through coaches, quarterbacks, and controversies. They don't need more dysfunction. They need accountability. They need leadership that values the truth over the scoreboard. And right now that's missing. Because the scoreboard, it can lie. A close loss can look like progress. A lucky win can cover up problems. But leadership decisions, those don't lie. They show exactly who's in control and why. Segment: KS post-game interview. And what Stefanski showed was that protecting himself was more important than putting the best quarterback on the field. That's why this moment is so defining. It's not just about what happened. It's about what didn't. There was no reset, no public self-correction. There was no humility. And now, it's too late to pretend like this wasn't a turning point. The media isn't dropping it. The analysts aren't moving on. And fans? They're more vocal than ever. Because this isn't just a controversy. It's a full-blown credibility crisis. And every week Stefanski stays quiet. It confirms exactly what people suspected. This was never about what was best for the Browns. It was about what was safest for him. Segment: SS in preseason match sideline. And you know who loses in that equation? Everyone. The team, because they missed out on building around a young QB sooner. The fans, because they've been fed a version of events that doesn't match what's clearly happening on the field. And Sanders, because he was made to wait, to prove himself twice as hard, to carry the weight of coach's pride before he could just play the game he was already ready for. Segment: KS speaking. Let's be clear. No one is demanding perfection. Every coach misses things. Every coach has to evolve. That's part of the job. But when you refuse to evolve, when you double down, ignore criticism, and treat silence like strategy, that's not coaching. That's control. And control doesn't win you loyalty in the NFL. Accountability does. If Stefanski had owned this from the start, even after the delay, the story would have been different. It would have been about growth, leadership, resilience. But instead, it's about damage. About a coach who chose self-preservation over progress. And now, the damage is showing. Segment: KS match photos. You can feel the trust starting to erode. The team can feel it. The front office can feel it. And if this continues, if Stefanski keeps pretending the situation never happened, he might find himself in a position he can't coach his way out of. Because once you lose the locker room, it's over. Segment: SS and KS2. There's no scheme that fixes a fractured culture. No playbook that patches up lost trust. A quarterback can carry your team. But if the guy calling the shots refuses to carry responsibility, you're done. And that's where we are now. At a crossroads. Stefanski can either step up and show that he's capable of humility, of learning, of leading, or he can ride out the storm in silence and watch the respect disappear in real time. Segment: SS interview. Shedeur Sanders has done everything he was supposed to, and more. He's risen above the politics, the hesitation, the waiting. He's shown what it looks like to stay ready, to lead with grace, to show up every day and prove the doubters wrong with actions, not words. Segment: KS speaking. Now the question is, will Kevin Stefanski do the same? Will he rise above the noise, acknowledge his mistake, and finally give Sanders a public recognition he's earned? Or will he stay silent and let this moment define his legacy? We've seen what happens when talent meets opportunity. Sanders proved it. Now we're about to find out what happens when ego meets accountability. Segment: SS sidelined. And let's be honest, this moment doesn't just belong to Stefanski. It belongs to every coach watching, every executive, every leader in sports who thinks their authority is more important than their honesty. Because if the NFL wants to talk about culture, growth, and character, this is what it looks like in real time. You can't preach leadership and then refuse to live it. You can't demand excellence from players and then hide from your own errors. And you definitely can't bench a quarterback who was ready and expect no one to notice. We noticed. The league noticed. The team noticed. Segment: Cleveland Browns matches master collection. Now it's your turn, coach. Drop your thoughts below. Should Stefanski finally face the music and admit he got it wrong? Do you think this has permanently damaged the trust between the coach and his team? Hit like if you believe Shedeur Sanders deserved better. And subscribe for more deep dives into the real stories behind the game. Because sometimes the biggest plays happen when the cameras aren't rolling.